Welcome back, economic warriors, to Boss Economics World, where we shred through the fluff, expose the government's epic mismanagement, and laugh in the face of recessions they swore wouldn't happen. I'm your host, the guy who saw this train wreck coming a mile away, and today, we're diving headfirst into the European Union's so-called spring in its step, a spring that's more like a drunken stumble into an economic ditch. Buckle up, folks, because this is gonna be a wild ride of satire, stats, and straight-up shade thrown at the bureaucrats who think 500 billion euros magically fixes decades of stupidity. Let's go. Oh, the European Union, that grand experiment in unity, bureaucracy, and endless cups of espresso at Brussels summits. Lately, EU officials have been strutting around like they've just won the Eurovision Song Contest, all because Donald Trump's tariff tantrums and rule of law rants have scared investors into hugging the euro like it's a life raft in a stormy sea. But let's not kid ourselves, folks, this so-called spring in their step is more like a desperate limp toward an economic cliff, and guess who's to blame? Yep, you guessed it, the geniuses in government who've spent years mismanaging the bloc into a state of perma-stagnation. Let's start with the poster child of this mess, Germany. The supposed economic powerhouse of Europe is staring down the barrel of a third straight year of stagnation in 2025, according to the International Monetary Fund's latest projections. Flatlining growth? Check. A real risk of shrinking GDP for the third year in a row? Double check, as ING economist Charlotte de Montpellier warned. And don't even get me started on the popular discontent brewing, job losses are piling up, and the pitchforks are coming out, all because governments thought austerity was the magic bullet for prosperity. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. But hey, at least the EU's got a shiny new 500 billion euros, $574 billion, package to throw at infrastructure and defense, right? Wrong. This isn't some bold vision for the future, it's a panicked band-aid on a gaping wound of their own making. Years of underinvestment, red tape thicker than a German sausage, and fiscal rules tighter than a hipster's skinny jeans have left Europe's economies gasping for air. And now, they think splashing cash around will fix it. As Mario Draghi, the guy who literally saved the euro once, warned, Europe is in for a slow agony unless it gets its act together. But nah, let's just keep patting ourselves on the back for surviving Trump's chaos, shall we? Now, let's talk about the Donald, the guy who's somehow become the EU's accidental cheerleader. His frontal assault on the $1.5 trillion transatlantic relationship has done more to prove the EU's worth than 1,000 white papers from Brussels technocrats. His attacks on NATO, Ukraine, and basically anything that smells remotely European have pushed member states to huddle closer together, like scared kids around a campfire. Even Denmark, the poster child of Euroscepticism, is shedding its anti-EU vibes faster than you can say, Greenland pressure. And the UK? Oh, they're inching back toward Brussels, realizing their special relationship with the US is about as special as a soggy fish and chip wrapper. But here's the kicker, folks, this newfound unity is just papering over the cracks of an economic system that's been mismanaged into oblivion. Sure, the euro's up 5% this year against a basket of currencies, while the US dollar's down 9%, according to Bloomberg data. Defense stocks like Rheinmetall AG are soaring, and Ursula von der Leyen is out there bragging, we have no bros and no oligarchs. But let's not get too cocky, Ursula. Europe's economy is twice as reliant on external trade as the US, per Bloomberg Economics, and Germany alone sends over 10% of its goods exports, think autos and pharmaceuticals, straight to America. So, when Trump's tariff war kicks into high gear, guess who's gonna feel the pain? Hint, it's not just the guy eating a Big Mac in Ohio. And oh, it gets worse. China's gearing up its export engine, ready to flood Europe with cheap goods as it redirects from the US. So, while the EU's busy playing defense against Trump, it might just find itself in a trade war on two fronts. But hey, at least we've got solidarity, right? Wrong. This is what happens when governments prioritize political posturing over actual economic strategy. Years of neglecting domestic industries, failing to integrate capital markets, and letting national taboos trump the greater good have left the EU woefully unprepared for the storm ahead. Thanks, governments, you've really outdone yourselves this time. Now, let's talk about the one guy who actually gets it, Mario Draghi. Remember him? The former ECB president who basically dragged Europe out of the Eurozone crisis by sheer force of will. Yeah, well, he's been screaming from the rooftops about what Europe needs to do to survive, and guess what? Governments are still ignoring him. His year-old recipe for success, bulking up fragmented industries, creating a real single market for banks, and integrating disparate capital markets, is gathering dust on some technocrat's desk while the EU pats itself on the back for surviving Trump's chaos. Draghi's not mincing words, folks. He's equated Europe's internal barriers to growth to a 45% tariff on goods and a whopping 110% levy on services. Let that sink in. The EU's own governments are effectively taxing their economies to death with red tape, national silos, and a refusal to integrate. And what's their big plan to fix it? Oh, just throw 500 billion euros at the problem and hope for the best. But as IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva pointed out, only a combo of more spending and more integration will lift growth and improve resilience. Spoiler alert, throwing cash at a broken system doesn't fix the system, it just buys you a fancier broken system. And let's not forget the new German government, which is somehow managing to make even 500 billion euro look like a half-baked idea. Where's the substance, folks? No real plans on pensions, no serious cuts to red tape, just a bunch of vague promises and photo ops. Meanwhile, the clock's ticking, and the summer of 2025 is shaping up to be a brutal test of trade pain. Will the EU rush to seal a deal with Trump in 90 days, as LVMH's billionaire boss Bernard Arnault seems to think? Or will it finally start implementing Draghi's vision? If history's any guide, I'm betting on the former, because nothing screams government competence like a last-minute panic deal that screws over the little guy. Now, credit where it's due, the European Central Bank is at least trying to clean up this mess. ECB President Christine Lagarde is out there warning that we cannot stop halfway, and her team is rising to the challenge by relaxing monetary policy to spur demand. Interest rates are coming down, folks. The ECB cut its main refinancing rate to 3.25% in October 2024, and markets are betting on more cuts in 2025, according to Reuters. This is the kind of bold action we need to get money flowing and businesses investing again. But here's the problem, the ECB can't do it alone. Governments need to step up and knock down their own barriers to growth, and so far, they're failing miserably. Take the EU's fiscal rules, for example. Germany, the austerity hawk of Europe, spent years championing rules so tight they choked off investment and innovation. Now, they're finally pushing to ease those rules, but is it too little, too late? You bet it is. And don't even get me started on the need for more qualified majority voting among the 27 EU nations, a taboo topic that's apparently too scary for our fearless leaders to touch. But hey, at least Trump's antics might jolt them into action, right? Because nothing says effective governance like being forced to act by a guy in a red tie yelling about tariffs. So, what's the real cost of all this government mismanagement, folks? Let's break it down. First, there's the economic cost. Germany's flatlining, the EU's facing trade wars on two fronts, and growth is nowhere to be seen. The IMF's latest World Economic Outlook, October 2024, slashed its growth forecast for the Eurozone to just 0.8% in 2025, down from 1.2% earlier this year. Meanwhile, inflation's still a concern, with Eurozone CPI hitting 2% in September 2024, per Eurostat, right on the ECB's target but threatening to creep higher if trade wars disrupt supply chains. Then, there's the social cost. Job losses are piling up, populists are gaining ground, and ordinary people are getting crushed under the weight of government incompetence. Just look at France, where unemployment stuck at 7.3% as of Q3 2024, according to INSEE, and the National Rally Party is licking its chops at the chance to exploit public anger. And in Germany, the far-right Alternative für Deutschland, AfD, is polling at record highs, with 19% support in October 2024, per Politico. This is what happens when governments prioritize political theater over real solutions, folks. The pitchforks come out, and the populists win. So, here's the Boss Economics World verdict, folks. The EU's spring in its step is nothing but a mirage, a feel-good story to distract us from the slow-motion car crash of government mismanagement. Trump's chaos might be forcing Europe to huddle closer, but unity without action is just a group hug on the Titanic. If the EU wants to survive, let alone thrive, it needs to stop patting itself on the back and start listening to Draghi, Lagarde, and the millions of ordinary people who are sick of paying the price for government incompetence. Until then, keep your wallets tight and your pitchforks ready, because this economic roller coaster's only going down. And to all you government officials out there watching, thanks for nothing, geniuses. This is Boss Economics World, signing off with a smirk and a middle finger to bad policy. See you next time, economic warriors.